Breaking news, a Hollywood star has just humiliated Britain's Prime Minister on live TV, and the footage is being erased as we speak. Tom Hardy did not come to play nice. The BBC thought they were getting a celebrity guest for a friendly chat with Keir Starmer. What they got was 15 minutes of raw, unfiltered truth that has the entire political establishment scrambling to contain the damage. If you want to see how badly this could shake up British politics, stay tuned because what happens next is going to define the next election. Here is what they do not want you to know. Quick favour, if you're loving this, hit that subscribe button. Over 92% of viewers haven't yet. It's free, takes a second and means the world to us. Thanks if you did. Now back to the show.
30 new turns and counting. Perhaps we should begin to feel sorry for Sir Keir Starmer because everything he touches turns to ashes and wormwood. He has the reverse Midas touch, that he doesn't seem to be able to get anything right. Take the recent events with Donald Trump.
It was supposed to be safe, a controlled BBC evening programme, soft questions, rehearsed answers, the usual political theatre. Starmer's team had it all mapped out. Then someone made a catastrophic error. They invited Tom Hardy. Not for politics, mind you, but for glamour. A few questions about his latest film, maybe some laughs, good ratings, they assumed. They figured the working-class kid from East Ham who became a global icon would play along. They were catastrophically wrong. The moment Hardy walked on set, everyone who knows him saw it. This was not the celebrity. This was the lad who never forgot what it is like to struggle. The cameras caught everything. Starmer extended his hand, a standard photo-op greeting, all smiles for the millions watching. But Hardy stared at that hand like it was toxic waste. 3 seconds of dead silence. The host tried to laugh it off. Nobody laughed. Then Hardy leaned in. His voice was quiet, controlled, and lethal. You know what, Keir? I came here tonight because I wanted to look you in the eye when I asked you this. How do you sleep at night? The studio went silent. Starmer's smile froze. You could see him reaching for his political training, searching for the right deflection. But Hardy was not asking a political question. He was making an accusation, and he had receipts. I've been out there. I've talked to real people, not your donors, not party insiders, actual British citizens, and they are drowning. Then he started listing names, not statistics. The 73-year-old pensioner in Manchester, choosing between heating and blood pressure medication. The small business owner in Birmingham who just laid off staff of 15 years because of new tax burdens. The veteran sleeping under a bridge in London. Every example hit like a hammer. Starmer tried to respond with the usual script about difficult decisions and long-term planning, but Hardy cut him off instantly. Do not give me the politician answer. These are not statistics. These are human beings, and you are sitting there in your designer suit, protected, guaranteed your salary, talking about sacrifice like you are the one making it. The camera found Starmer's face, and that is when it happened. The polished mask cracked just for a second, but the cameras caught it. Irritation, contempt, the barely hidden arrogance of someone who is used to controlling every interview, now facing someone who does not play by those rules. The host tried to cut to a commercial break, but Hardy ignored him completely. You want to know why your approval ratings are in free fall? Because people can see what you really are. You are not a leader. You are a party operative who got promoted past his...
Now, one thing is for sure, Sir Keir Starmer is not acting in our national interest. He hasn't done it over Chagos, he hasn't done it over the Chinese mega embassy, or over illegal immigration, Islamist extremism, the Pakistani rape gangs, the economy. He hasn't acted in our best interest when it comes to our energy bills, the education system, small businesses, farmers, pensioners, pub landlords. Who the heck is our Prime Minister working for?
Dead silence in the studio. This was not entertainment. This was a political execution happening in real time. Starmer finally spoke, defensive, weak, muttering something about mandates and democratic processes. It was the worst possible response. Hardy laughed. It was not a friendly laugh. It was bitter and disbelieving. Courage? You want to talk about courage? Courage is the single mother working 2 jobs who still cannot make rent. Courage is the elderly couple rationing their medication. Courage is the small business owner mortgaging their house to save their employees' jobs. You sitting in Downing Street, insulated from every consequence. That is not courage. That is cowardice in a nice suit. The BBC producers lost control. People were rushing backstage, making frantic gestures at the host, someone likely screaming through his earpiece, but they could not cut away. The broadcast was live. Millions were watching. Cutting the feed would be obvious censorship, a bigger story than the confrontation itself. They were trapped. Starmer tried to fight back. He questioned Hardy's credentials, suggesting actors should stick to entertainment. Fatal mistake. Hardy's response was instant. "You're right, I am just an actor. What do I know? Except I grew up in social housing. My mum was a painter. My dad worked whatever jobs he could get. I know what it is like to watch your parents choose between bills. I lived in the real Britain. You, private school straight into politics. Never struggled once, and it shows in every policy you push." The class warfare was naked now. Establishment politician versus working class success story who never forgot his roots. Hardy was using his background like a weapon. Starmer pivoted again. Complexity, nuance, balancing competing interests, the standard political deflection. Hardy destroyed it in one sentence. There is nothing complex about right and wrong. You are taking from people with nothing and protecting people with everything. That is not complexity. That is corruption. Legal corruption, maybe, but corruption. The word landed like a bomb. Starmer's face went red. His handlers approached the stage, trying to end this disaster, but it was too late. Hardy was not done. He brought specific policy numbers, wait times, tax burdens, service cuts. This was not celebrity virtue signalling. He had done his homework, and he dismantled every Starmer talking point with hard data and real-world consequences. The host made one desperate attempt to change topics. He asked about Hardy's upcoming films. Hardy looked at him with such withering contempt that the man physically shrank. "You think that matters right now? The country is falling apart, and you want movie gossip? This is exactly the problem. Media and politicians more interested in distraction than truth." Then Hardy did something extraordinary. He turned directly to the camera, ignored Starmer, ignored the host, and spoke straight to Britain. "If you are watching this and struggling, if you feel like nobody in power cares, I want you to know something. You are not imagining it. They do not care. They built a system that protects them and exploits you. They are counting on you being too tired to fight back. But you have power, and it is time to use it." Starmer called it populist rhetoric, which only proved Hardy's point. Here was the Prime Minister dismissing legitimate suffering as populism. The disconnect could not be clearer. Security moved in. BBC security and government protection officers approaching carefully, unsure how to remove someone on live television without proving every point he had just made. Hardy stood up. He made no move to resist, but he was not finished. This is how it works. Someone tells the truth, challenges the narrative, and they shut it down. Tomorrow they will call me unstable or attention-seeking. They will say I do not understand governance. Anything except address what I actually said. Starmer tried the high road, said he respected Hardy's passion but disagreed with his characterization. Weak. Everyone knew it. Hardy delivered his final shot. "Of course you disagree. Your career depends on it. Admitting I'm right means admitting you failed, that every decision hurt the people you swore to serve. Your ego won't allow that, so you'll deny reality while people suffer." Hardy walked off. Not rushed, not escorted. He walked away with quiet dignity. The cameras followed until he disappeared, leaving a vacuum of silence that felt heavier than the shouting. Cut back to Starmer looking like he had been hit by a truck. The host asked if he wanted to respond. He gave a generic statement about standing by his record, hollow and meaningless. Within minutes, social media exploded. The footage spread everywhere, gaining millions of views. People were clipping the best moments, every platform lighting up with the hashtag Hardy vs Starmer. But then the strangest thing started happening. The official BBC clips began to vanish. YouTube mirrors were hit with copyright strikes within seconds. The establishment response was swift and predictable. Within an hour, major outlets published articles calling Hardy's outburst inappropriate. Political commentators questioned whether celebrities should involve themselves in politics. The BBC apologised for the confrontation, promising to review their booking procedures, make sure this never happens again, keep everything controlled, pre-approved and safe. But something shifted. Hardy said publicly what millions thought privately. No amount of damage control could erase that. Suddenly, people across Britain were talking openly about government competence, the elite disconnect, and the feeling that democracy had become theatre, while real decisions happened elsewhere, made by people who face no consequences when they fail. The conversation changed, and the establishment knows it. This wasn't just a viral moment, it was a glitch in the matrix. A moment where the carefully curated reality of Westminster was torn open by a man who refused to follow the script. Now, let's look at the timing. This wasn't just some random Tuesday. Starmer had just tried to launch a massive New Year reset for 2026. He'd gone on Sunday with Laura Quinsberg just weeks earlier, trying to look like a man of the people, dodging questions about U-turns on digital IDs and inheritance tax for farmers. He thought he'd weathered the storm. He thought the British public had a short memory. He was counting on the fact that by late January, everyone would be too worried about their heating bills to care about his broken promises. Then Tom Hardy enters the chat. It was like Starmer had spent months building a house of cards, only for a gust of East London wind to blow the whole thing down in 15 minutes. The reset wasn't just failing in the polls, where Starmer's net favourability has plummeted to a staggering -57 as of January 2026. It was failing in the streets. You cannot tell a farmer who is losing his family land, or a pensioner who is choosing between a warm room and their heart pills, that things are complex. Hardy understood that. He brought the moral weight of a man who hasn't spent his life in the Westminster bubble. And the establishment's reaction? They didn't even try to address the points, they just tried to delete the evidence. But in 2026, you can't delete the internet. For every clip the BBC took down, 10 more appeared on encrypted platforms. The Streisand effect was in full force. By trying to hide the humiliation, they made it the biggest event in British broadcasting history. Starmer's team immediately reached for the P word, populism. They wanted to frame Hardy as a dangerous radical or an uninformed actor playing a part. But let's be honest, when 75% of the British public sees the Prime Minister unfavourably, who is the real radical? Who is the one out of touch with reality? In January 2026, we are seeing a total collapse of the political centre. People aren't just angry, they are disengaged. Nearly half of the public now says they wouldn't choose Starmer, Kemi Badenoch or Nigel Farage as their preferred Prime Minister. They would choose none of the above.
Pretty boy Andy Burnham might have found a route back to Parliament via a by-election.
Is this Keir Starmer's worst nightmare?
You could end up with an even more left-wing Labour Party. I mean, those of us on the right think this Labour Party is catastrophically left-wing and has wreaked extreme damage on this country as a result of its absurd policies. But just wait until we get the next Labour leader.
Camilla, everyone assumes that the strongest challenger to Keir Starmer within the Labour Party would be Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham. The problem is, he's not in Parliament.
Hardy spoke for that 48%. He spoke for the none of the aboves. When he called out Starmer's designer suit and guaranteed salary, he wasn't being mean. He was being observant. The British public is tired of being told they need to tighten their belts by people who have never had to skip a meal. The contrast couldn't have been sharper. You had a man who makes a living pretending to be other people, telling the truth, and a man who makes a living pretending to lead, telling lies. It's the ultimate irony of modern Britain. The actor was the only one being real, and don't think for a second the world wasn't watching. This wasn't just a local spat. In the United States, Donald Trump, now back in the White House, has been watching the UK like a hawk. The special relationship is currently at its most strained point in a generation. Just this week, Starmer had to publicly rebuke Trump for insulting comments about British troops in Afghanistan. The timing of Hardy's outburst couldn't have been worse for Starmer's international standing. How can you stand up to a bully in Washington when you're being dismantled by a man from Richmond on your own national broadcaster? The fallout has reached the Commonwealth too, with Canada and Australia watching the UK's internal friction. The idea of global Britain looks more like fractured Britain. Hardy's mention of legal corruption hit a global nerve. It's the same sentiment we're seeing in the US, in France and across the EU. The feeling that the rules only apply to the people at the bottom. By challenging Starmer live on air, Hardy didn't just speak for Britain. He spoke for a global movement of people who are finished with the managed democracy of the Davos set. He pulled back the curtain on the wizard, and it turns out the wizard was just a nervous man in a very expensive suit. We also have to talk about the BBC itself. They are in absolute meltdown. This wasn't just an interview gone wrong, it was a failure of the entire system designed to protect the status quo. The BBC has been accused for years of being too cosy with the government of the day, regardless of the party, and this incident proved it. The frantic review of booking procedures is essentially an admission that they only want guests who won't ask difficult questions. They want safe celebrities who will talk about their skincare routine or their latest Netflix show. They don't want someone like Tom Hardy, who might actually have an opinion on the state of the NHS or the cost of living. This is why traditional media is dying. People are flocking to independent channels like this one because we don't have booking procedures designed to protect the Prime Minister. We don't have producers screaming in our ears to change the topic. The BBC's attempts to scrub the footage only reinforce the narrative that they are the communications wing of the state. It's 2026. People can smell censorship from a mile away. Every time a video is removed, another 1,000 people realise that the mainstream media isn't there to inform them, it's there to manage them. Hardy's refusal to play the game has forced a reckoning for the auntie of broadcasting that she might not survive in her current form.
Boris Johnson has a reputation as being a politician who lies, right?
Yeah.
Boris Johnson did not lie anywhere near as often nor as brazenly, nor with the sense of sanctimoniousness with which our current Prime Minister lies. Lies every single day. His entire political career was built on lies. The lie about the second referendum that he said he wasn't preparing but was actually secretly working for. The lie he told to the Labour electorate that he was a massive left-winger and then switched to being a moderate as soon as he got in. And then the lie he told to the general election that he was some massive moderate and then switched to becoming a left-winger as soon as he's in power. I mean, this is lie after lie after lie.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just Keir Starmer. There is a lot of that going on in all political parties at the moment. But that was, the morning after, the night before, that was a blatant lie. Your taxes are going up because we're putting more into the NHS. Might be putting more into the NHS, but your taxes are going up because you're putting more into that benefits bill. And that is an actual fact. And Harry could stand there and say, no, we need all this tax to pay into the NHS, when actually most of your taxes will be going for the benefits bill.
Well, shall we speak to our...
You're better off sitting at home having loads of baby.
Let's look at the class dynamic Hardy brought up, because it's the third rail of British politics. Starmer, the son of a toolmaker, has spent his entire career trying to craft a working-class persona while living the ultimate middle-class life. Hardy didn't let him get away with it. He pointed out the straight-into-politics path that defines so much of the current cabinet. This isn't just about where you went to school. It's about the lack of life experience outside of the political bubble. When Hardy talked about his mum being a painter and his dad working multiple jobs, he wasn't just virtue signalling, he was pointing out a fundamental lack of empathy in the policy-making process. If you've never had to choose between a bill and a meal, you can't truly understand why the British public is so angry. You see people as numbers on a spreadsheet to be managed rather than human beings to be led. This is the core of the elite disconnect. Starmer views a U-turn as a pragmatic policy adjustment. The person affected by it views it as a betrayal of their future. Hardy's Councillor State Kid energy was the perfect antidote to Starmer's Director of Public Prosecutions energy. One is raw and real, the other is clinical and cold. In a battle between those two, the British public is always going to side with the man who feels like he's in the room with them. So where does this leave the Prime Minister? Honestly, he's in the death spiral phase of his premiership. When you've lost the celebrities, when you've lost the working class, and when you've lost the ability to control your own narrative on the national broadcaster, what's left? The 2026 local elections are looming, and the Labour Party is terrified. They are seeing a surge in support for Reform UK. Nigel Farage is currently leading Starmer in Best PM, head-to-heads, and even the Green Party is making massive gains under Zach Polanski. Hardy's intervention provided a unified theory of why the government is failing. It's not just one bad policy, it's a failure of character. It's the cowardice in a nice suit line. That is a label you can't peel off. It's sticky. It's the kind of insult that follows a politician to their grave. Starmer's legal corruption is now the phrase everyone is using. Every time a new donor is revealed or a new tax loophole is found for the wealthy, Hardy's words will ring in the public's ears. He didn't just win a debate, he changed the vocabulary of the opposition. Here is what matters. This was not about one confrontation. This was about legitimacy. It was about whether the people in power have any moral authority to govern, whether democracy serves citizens, or just provides cover for decisions made by an elite that holds ordinary people in contempt. Tom Hardy walked onto that BBC set as an entertainer. He walked off as something else. He became a voice for everyone who has been told to sit down and accept policies that hurt them. Everyone who has been dismissed as too simple to understand the complexities of governance. The media will try to bury this. They will frame Hardy as emotional, uninformed or irresponsible. They will protect Starmer and the system he represents. But millions of people watched that exchange. They saw who spoke with moral clarity and who hid behind political language. They saw who had courage and who had a teleprompter. The question now is, what happens next? Will this moment fade like so many others, buried under the next news cycle? Or will it be the spark that forces real accountability? That depends on whether people are willing to do what Tom Hardy did, speak truth to power, refuse to accept empty promises, and demand better from those who claim to lead. The establishment is counting on you to forget, to move on, to accept that this is just how things are. Do not let them be right. As we move deeper into 2026, the political landscape in the UK is unrecognisable. The Hardy factor wasn't just a blip, it was a catalyst. According to the latest polling from January 2026, public confidence in traditional leadership is at an all-time low. Keir Starmer's net approval has plummeted to 46, a figure that matches the absolute nadir of post-war premierships. When Hardy stood on that stage, he wasn't just shouting into a void, he was articulating a statistical reality. Nearly half of the British public now says they would choose neither when asked who would make the best Prime Minister between the main party leaders. The special relationship with the United States is under similar strain, with the US taking aggressive military actions in places like Venezuela and eyeing territory like Greenland. The British public is increasingly wary. Only 30% of Britons now see the relationship as a positive for the UK. When Hardy accused Starmer of being a party operative more interested in global optics than local reality, he hit a nerve that resonates with the 20% of the population who feel the UK's independence is being traded away for a seat at the big kids' table. In a desperate bid to regain control, the authorities have ramped up their attacks on alternative news. We've seen the rise of what some are calling the Offender Hall of Shame, a coordinated effort to brand independent media and individual voices as fake news or biased. Even major tech platforms are being threatened with bans if they don't comply with strict new regulations on harmful content, which, coincidentally, often includes footage of politicians being humiliated. But the Trump 2.0 playbook, which Starmer's allies are now accused of mirroring, is failing in the UK. People are moving away from traditional media institutions that feel irrelevant and inauthentic. They are looking for personality-led news voices that feel real. Hardy's intervention was the ultimate personality-led news event. It bypassed the gatekeepers and went straight to the heart of the nation. The BBC can review its procedures all it wants, but they can't force the public to look away from a truth they've already seen. The reckoning is here. Tom Hardy didn't give us a solution, but he gave us something more important, the permission to ask the right questions. He showed us that the experts are only experts in keeping themselves in power. If you want to see more content that cuts through the political nonsense and shows you what's really happening in the corridors of power, then you know what to do. Share this video with everyone who needs to hear it. Comment below. Do you think Hardy was right to use his platform this way, or should he have stayed in his lane? The conversation they don't want us having is the only one worth having. The cameras might have stopped rolling, but the reckoning Tom Hardy started, that is just beginning. Thank you for watching.